Welcome, Brittany.
Thank you for having me.
Totally. Yeah, I'm really excited to hear all of your stories. Do you want to start with your first pregnancy? Maybe take me back to like when you found out you were pregnant and how that was for you.
Okay, so my first daughter, when I found out that I was pregnant with her, I was 18. So I was like really kind of scared. I didn't really know what to do, what to expect. Um, but eventually, the whole family found out and things went a lot smoother than I thought that that would be. Um, Everything pregnancy wise with her, I feel like was pretty smooth up until I hit like 36 weeks. And at 36 weeks, I started getting a lot of swelling, and just preeclampsia signs. I'm actually not sure if my labs actually showed any of that, or like the urine tests that they did at the office showed any of that, because the doctor was kind of old school, so everything was paper. So I have no way of looking back at that now because she's retired. So at 37 weeks, I went in for my weekly appointment, and they were monitoring my blood pressure and it was elevated. So she had me lay on my left side for a little while, and then they came back in and checked it again and it was still high. So she actually had me leave her office that day and go to the hospital for a emergency C-section.
Wow, what a shock.
It was such a shock. So from 36 weeks to 37 weeks, she had put me on bed rest. And I'm like, this is the time that I'm like nesting. It was so hard. I mean, I did my best to sit still. Like, I sat on my bed and like folded baby clothes to like not allow myself to be up.
Yeah.
But
Wow.
so that whole week, it was pretty stressful because I kind of felt like that was coming. And my goal was to have an all natural vaginal birth, no complications. And boom, here were the complications. So I remember being at the hospital. I finally got there a couple hours later because I'm like, I have to go home and grab bags. Like, we're not prepared. And just sitting there, like, with the paperwork to sign and just give consent to everything. And like, there is a photo of me just like sitting there, and like my face is just, you can tell, like, I did not want that at all. But I was also kind of scared. I was told, well, if you have high blood pressure, you could have a seizure, and then your baby doesn't get any sort of oxygen or nutrients, blood flow, during that length of that seizure. And I'm like, well, I don't want that. I don't want to hurt my baby. I want her to come here safely. So I guess I'll sign this paperwork. So I ended up having the C section. Healing wise, afterward, I felt like things were pretty good. Being 18 having a baby compared to 31 having a baby is definitely different. Um, but I know walking up the stairs and getting into the car, like, I just remember that was pretty rough, and just having to like hold my belly because I wanted to cough, or just little things like that, just from a major surgery. So
Yeah, that sounds really hard and so scary too. I wonder if you would like to share for those who don't know what preeclampsia is. Are you open to sharing a little bit more about what that is?
from my experience with my pregnancies, preeclampsia showed up as high blood pressure, swelling, headaches. There is protein in the urine.
Yeah, those are the most common symptoms of preeclampsia. I think I'll add another one I know of is upper right pain, right? Did
Yep.
you experience that?
I didn't.
Hmm.
I didn't. And I didn't even know that until my fourth pregnancy, when my midwife was asking me if I was having any of those symptoms, because of course, she just wanted to have an overall, check for me since I've had that in the past. So I don't believe that they actually diagnosed me with preeclampsia, but I was definitely showing the symptoms of it. Maybe me having a C-section like 3 weeks early just rolled it out to like hypertension and pregnancy. But it was definitely, it was there.
For sure. Yeah, no, that sounds more like preeclampsia. I think a lot of people get hypertension in pregnancy confused with preeclampsia, or they start feeling really afraid they're developing preeclampsia, but there is a difference. So you can have hypertension in pregnancy and not develop preeclampsia. Hypertension in pregnancy definitely comes with its own risks, but it's not as life-threatening, as preeclampsia is. And preeclampsia, for those who don't know, is a condition where it kind of starts at the very beginning in the early stages of pregnancy, and the blood flow that is being established, there's sort of a malformation in the way that forms early on, but then symptoms usually don't show up until a little bit later. And it could lead to a stress response in the body that can cause your body to start attacking major organs like your brain or your liver. That's where the upper right um, gastrointestinal pain symptom can come from. And people do die from preeclampsia if it leads, especially if it's untreated and leads to eclampsia, which can cause seizures. But I'm curious why you had a C-section because I've never heard of anyone having a C-section. Usually with preeclampsia, the stories that I have heard, if someone is diagnosed, if they have all those symptoms, not just high blood pressure, but also protein in the urine and things like that, they would be, given like an induction and they would try to get the baby out vaginally. So I wonder if it was like very advanced, or you're kind of shaking your head no.
I honestly, like looking back now and just knowing what I know now, I'm like, we could have totally done something different. But because I didn't know the things that I know now, I just did what they told me. And I feel like I really fell into the scare tactics that sometimes they unfortunately do. So, what's crazy is my sister in law was like 3 weeks behind me, and we had the same doctor, and they did the same exact thing to her. 3 weeks early, C section, high blood pressure, swelling, and I feel like when they start throwing out like the risks and everything like that, like you want to know that stuff, but sometimes I feel like there is like pressure behind the risks that they're telling you. So you feel like you need to do what they're saying. And I mean, that's really what I did at 18 years old, not having any idea in the world. But I knew in my body that it didn't feel like what I wanted.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. I'm surprised that they didn't counsel you on the options around having a vaginal birth because you would think if someone were to present the option for like a very extreme, abdominal surgery, that they would also be, which comes with a lot of risks, that would also be talking to you about the risks of vaginal birth if they were concerned that vaginal birth wasn't a safe option for you. It makes sense to have a cesarean if preeclampsia is advancing and you've like really need to get baby out like then and there. But it sounds like maybe that's not where you were, and you did have that wiggle room, the time to be able to have a vaginal birth. So perhaps this provider just routinely gives people cesareans with a preeclampsia diagnosis and they don't attempt vaginal births, which is something I've never heard of. But every provider is so different. And it's so hard when you're in that moment because you don't know what you don't know. And you are the most vulnerable, you've ever been in your life at the end of pregnancy. So vulnerable. And if someone is using fear, it totally makes sense that you're going to do whatever they say because you want your baby to be healthy. I'm really sorry.
Yeah, definitely something that with my pregnancies afterward that I knew like there was other options for me, and I wasn't going to let a doctor ever come in and, be like that to me again. So the story gets better.
Yeah. I feel like sometimes that's just how we learn, you know? We
Yeah.
like have that first experience. Same with me. I mean, I knew so much going into my first, and I had a midwife team and I was planning a home birth, and I ended up having the home birth, and it was a really lovely experience, but there were so many areas that I really wasn't showing up fully for myself very well, areas I wasn't educated on. And I definitely had a more challenging experience in many ways because of that. And it wasn't until my second I had the opportunity to really apply everything that I learned from all the mistakes I made with my first, which really just came from a lack of knowledge and experience. I feel like everyone is doing their best. This is such a big world birth, to have to like learn about, plus all of the deconditioning from all the fear that we've been, exposed to. It's big, big work to show up fully and to know all the things. And sometimes it takes a couple experiences to really be like, oh, I know what I want and I know how to advocate for it and I know what my boundaries are and all that stuff.
And I feel like a lot of people too think that they're helping when they tell you their birth stories that didn't go so well.
Girl.
You're like, I actually could have gone without knowing that.
Right? Like PSA for all people out there who think it's okay to share your negative birth stories with pregnant women. It's not.
Yeah.
We don't want to hear it. We can't like
Yes.
take that on. I'm sorry.
Okay, I think that was pretty much it. My daughter was super healthy, 7 pounds, 13 ounces, 3 weeks early. So she would have been ginormous by the time that she was born if we made it to the 40-week mark. But she was perfect when she was born. Little angel, she changed my life. So
Oh, yeah. Yay. Do you want to tell me about your next pregnancy? How old was she when you were pregnant with your next?
she was 3. Yes, because her and my next daughter, their birthdays are 9 days apart. So she was almost 4 when my
Wow.
next daughter was born.
Wow. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's neat. My same with two of my kids. They're like 9 days apart on their birthday.
I love it. So with her, I was put on birth control after my first pregnancy, like right away. I'm like, I know that we're not trying to do this again anytime soon. So I was on the implant in my arm. That was a roller coaster. So eventually, once like the 3 year expiration removal time came, we had decided that once it was removed, we would try for another one. And I got pregnant like the next day. I swear it was like so fast. I'm like, they took that out
Oh
when I was ovulating, like they had to.
my gosh. Wow.
Yeah, it was super fast. So with her, it felt a little bit different, planning it compared to like having a surprise. So with her, it was pretty much the same. Like my pregnancy was really good. My checkups were always great. It wasn't really until like the end of my pregnancy that we realized that she was posterior, so she was facing the front of my belly and her spine was against my spine. That's the best way I know how to explain it. So I started doing all the exercises to turn her. And I was told that during labor, most of the time, those babies will turn on their own. She did like part way. Um, so with her, I went in wanting a VBAC because I knew that I didn't want the C-section again. I was told I was a great candidate. She looked great. Everything was going great for me. And with her, my water happened to break at home. at like 10 o'clock at night, of course, I was like telling myself that I could wait longer to have to get up and go pee for the like 1 millionth time. And then all of a sudden, I heard a pop and felt the pop in my stomach. And then I had a cramp at that same time. And I'm like, huh, that was weird that I actually like heard something. Like with my ears, I heard the amniotic sac pop. So like I laid there for another minute and I just kind of put my timer on my phone and was like, okay, what's going on here? Because I was 39 weeks and 3 days at that point. So I had talked to my sister earlier that day and I was like, she should just come this weekend. Like, that would work out the best. Like, my oldest daughter, she doesn't have to miss preschool. You know, she could just come this weekend. And then that night, my water broke. I'm like, okay, I called it. So I laid there for like a couple contractions. And then I finally was like, okay, I should go to the bathroom now. And I went to the bathroom. But when I was done, I was still going. And I'm like, okay, either I'm peeing and I don't know it, which is odd, or my water broke. Kind of knowing what the amniotic fluid looked like, I grabbed a cup, did my own little, observation of it, and was like, okay, I can see like there's little white flakes in there, floating around. I'm like, this is definitely amniotic fluid. So I luckily had everything packed that day. I just must have felt it in my bones. And my daughter's bag was all packed so she could go to her grandparents, and which we had actually just left their house like a couple hours prior to that. So like we just went right back and dropped her off. By the time that I got to the hospital, I was only 3 centimeters. And I'm like, oh my gosh, my water broke at 3 centimeters. Like, we are going to be here forever. And never experienced labor before either, so the contractions and stuff that I was feeling, they are intense. Like having menstrual cramps compared to a contraction, it's different, so I really had no experience with that, and my partner didn't have any experience with a vaginal birth either because our first daughter was a C-section, so it was kind of like figuring that out for ourselves too. Um, so they checked everything, made sure that it was amniotic fluid. They decided they wanted to keep me in labor and delivery, and I was given a room. And as soon as I was given a room, they wanted to hook me up to IVs and put the monitors on my belly, and I felt strapped to the bed. So I'm laboring and in pain. It's like I said, my water broke at 10 p.m. So all through the night, I'm laboring and strapped in a bed. Like, that's literally what it felt like. I felt like I was like contained, and I really wasn't encouraged to get up and move or do anything to help the process along or just like help cope with the pain. So I really just kind of struggled through it up until I was checked, and I had a cervical exam and I was 7 centimeters dilated. This was, let's see, that was 17 hours later. Yes, I was 7 centimeters dilated.
Wow.
Yeah.
I wonder if it took so long because she was face up. It can sometimes take a little bit longer, and you were not able to move.
No.
It feels like a crime to strap someone who is in labor to a bed and restrict their movement and to not offer any sort of support around freedom of movement and to expect them to somehow cope. It feels like a crime to
Well, and
me.
I almost feel like they were like maybe thinking like, oh, it's nighttime, like, the patients are sleeping. I have no idea. But I still wish that they would have like showed me like the exercise ball, like the peanut ball, like something, but at 7 centimeters dilated, they decided that they wanted to break my water, and there was meconium in the amniotic fluid.
Oh, so maybe I'll stop right here just so other people know. There are two layers to the amniotic sac. And so sometimes one layer can break and you can have fluid trickling, but the other layer's intact. Or maybe for you, was it there like a high leak and that's where your water broke? Okay, there was a high
Yes,
leak, so
that's what
probably
it
both
was.
layers broke, but it was up high. And
Mm-hmm.
then the bag is still surrounding the baby's head, and there's probably still water there.
Yeah.
So that way they wanted to break it to like help kind of clear that fluid around the baby's head away.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So then, when they broke my water, we noticed that there was meconium in the amniotic fluid. So we were told right then and there that there would be like a NICU team ready to basically take my daughter if she had inhaled any of the fluid. Which was pretty scary knowing that I was 7 centimeters and it took me, 17 hours to get to the 17 or the 7 centimeters. So that was a little concerning for me. But as soon as they broke my water, like super hard labor contractions started for me. So that was definitely hard, never going through that pain and not really having them coach me on, coping mechanisms. So at that point, I asked for the epidural. And I mean, my contractions were so bad at that point that, like, I had to tell, like, the anesthesiologist, I'm like, you just have to hold on a second before you do anything because I actually thought I was going to vomit from the pain. And they gave me the epidural, which was great at that moment. Um, I sat up in bed and just, tried to let gravity help with things. And an hour later, they came in and checked me, and I was 10 centimeters. So I almost feel like maybe the stress of everything, too, on my body might have slowed things down, just not knowing how things were going to go, just not to open when it needed to. Um, and I'm sure the pain definitely had me stressed, which we did notice, just to like go back to the high blood pressure. We did notice that during my labor, my blood pressure rose, which in my opinion was normal because I was in pain. It wasn't like anything crazy, like 130s over 80s. And during my labor, when my blood pressure did spike, in their opinion, they did tell me that if we couldn't bring it down, that I would end up having another C-section. So that wasn't fun to deal with. And they also ended up giving me magnesium sulfate to keep my blood pressure down. And the magnesium sulfate then slowed my labor and my contractions. So then they gave me Pitocin because my contractions weren't as consistent, was the word, that they wanted them to be, which now I'm just like, nobody's consistent. Everybody's body handles labor differently. But then at the time, we still had those scare tactics going on. I was getting to have the experience I wanted, birthing wise. I was able to do a vaginal birth, but I still feel like some of that blanket of fear was definitely on top of everything. So then let's see, back to me dilating to 10 centimeters. It was time for me to start pushing. And of course, I didn't really feel anything at that point. So I didn't know whether I was having a contraction or not. I didn't really feel like my belly tighten, like, you know, you hear. Um, so I'm just like pushing away and nothing's really happening. I finally noticed after probably about an hour of pushing that I would push, but then I would kind of raise my hips a little bit and it would kind of have her rock back. So, like, she kind of was going back and forth under my pubic bone for a little bit there. Um, and the epidural stopped working. So during the pushing, I actually was feeling everything. I pressed the button, you know, like they had told me to have another dose. And I'm like, well, I felt it. It was cold on my spine. I felt that. And I'm like, but it's not doing anything. So at that point, I learned sometimes it only works for that first round and then it's done. um,
Yeah, epidurals, sometimes that happens, or sometimes they don't work at all, or they only numb one half of your body, or the other half. Most of the time they do work and they work well, but there are definitely times where they don't. And I think a lot of people don't know that and they're totally shocked, about the fact that they're having feeling and they weren't expecting to have feeling. So I like to tell everyone that, it's good to like prepare just in
yes,
case. Yeah. Okay, wow. So you are feeling everything while
yes.
pushing.
Yes, and it's funny because in the hospital, the doctors really don't come in until like the baby's like going to come out. So the nurses there do everything. And so I just remember like the nurse sitting at the end of the bed and things are happening very slowly in my opinion. And her just being like, oh yeah, you're gonna feel pressure, and I'm like, this is a lot more than pressure. But I'm like, okay, whatever, like we gotta get this baby out. um, so she did turn, but only part way, and so her shoulders weren't straight up and down. Or let's see. I'm like, in my mind, I'm like,
You mean when her head came out or was before she came out?
so yeah, like after her head was born, her shoulders, like the rest of her body, hadn't turned
Okay,
any
yeah.
posterior.
Mhm, mhm.
I
Yeah.
probably didn't explain that very well.
No, you're fine. It's hard to explain these things. Yeah, so when the baby's head comes out, they do something called restitution, which is where they turn to one side or the other. They choose which side to turn, and so that they can deliver one shoulder at a time, because both shoulders can't exit the pelvis at the same time. So they turn to one side, and then the top shoulder will exit first. So you're saying that she came out directly posterior, sunny side up, and didn't rotate.
Yeah. So that led to a gnarly tear. Um, Again, never experiencing any of that. That was not very fun to have stitches inside and out. Um, yeah, that that sucked for sure.
I wonder if she didn't turn. Sometimes if babies like their head comes out and they don't really do that restitution, the turn, it's because their shoulders are a little stuck. What did she have a dystocia? Did they have to like really do some maneuvers to help her come out?
They didn't mention that her shoulders were stuck. She was my biggest baby of all of my babies, so it's definitely possible. But I guess in my mind, I'm like, okay, well, the whole labor part, I wasn't really being like coached or anything like that. So did they even really know, to tell me that? But I do wonder that now if she did have some shoulder dystocia, especially having the tear that I had. So it's definitely possible.
Can I ask what position were you in? Were you on your back?
Yes, of
Mhm.
course.
Yeah. Yeah, so that could have influenced it a little bit. Also, provider hands-on, which is where your providers are touching your body and your baby and doing those maneuvers to pull the baby's head down and get the shoulders to deliver, actually increases your risk for tearing. There's an idea that like provider hands-on will protect your perineum. I just attended a birth at a hospital as a doula recently, and the mom wanted a totally hands-off delivery. And so as a doula, I spoke to the doctor and I said, like, she wants to be hands off. And his hands off dad catching is like, dad's the one with hands on the baby, and doctor puts his hands on dad's hands and then like does all the maneuvers still. So it's still pretty hands on. And she was like, I don't want doctor to touch me at all or touch my baby at all. And I was explaining that to him, and he was like, well, how am I going to protect her perineum if I can't put my hands on her? And I was like, I'll tell her that that's what you said. And it varies person to person. There are certain circumstances where hands on can be really helpful, but in general, based on the research that we have, provider hands off is more ideal, is more protective for your perineum. And so, being on your back and having hands on potentially increased your, you know, severity of tears or caused the tear. It's possible. And you also maybe could have torn still if you didn't have hands on and if you were in a different position. It's hard to know, but I wonder if those factors were you doing directed pushing as well? Like, were they coaching you to push hard?
Yeah, they were telling me to push, but then when I started feeling my contractions and everything, like I kind of did some of that just on my own, just from feeling the pressure. Um, I must wonder too, now that we're talking about this, because I had the epidural, maybe they didn't feel like they had to be as gentle. Maybe they thought that I wouldn't feel it, even though I was. Um, I don't know, just a little thought there, but
Yeah, yeah, that's really common. I see that in providers, forgetting to inform people that they're doing things, or forgetting to be really gentle and careful with what they do, because they're used to the majority of their patients having epidurals and not having any feeling. That's a possibility.
yeah, I think so.
Yeah, yeah. Well, how did you feel after that birth?
Um, I was just so happy that I got to have the vaginal birth. Like that was my goal. Even though, like at the moment you're in such a high, like you just deliver this beautiful baby. I remember just looking at her and just crying, just saying, "Oh my God, she's so beautiful," and just being so in love and just so excited for like my oldest daughter to come in and meet her baby sister and all that fun stuff. Um, but physically, for me, let's see, I was 22 then, so I still feel like my my body, I feel like, healed pretty well. The tears weren't very fun. They did take a little while to heal, and at one point I did go in for a follow up just from having pain. No infections or anything like that. Just like the stitches were really uncomfortable, and just once they came out, it was like a relief that things weren't being held so tightly then. Um, but I was able to get up and walk to the bathroom and, do everything that you would normally, I guess I would say, after having a vaginal birth. I didn't really have any of like the cramping and stuff like that. I mean, I felt like some pain when I would nurse my daughter, um, but other than that, it wasn't too terrible.
Yay! Wasn't too terrible. I know postpartum can be so rough, especially recovering from a tear.
I guess like with her, because I breastfed my oldest daughter too. I just remember like my milk coming in and just being so engorged, and like her not being able to latch because like my nipple was almost like flat to my breast because the milk was pushing so hard. I think that that was probably like rougher for me just because I wanted to feed my baby and she was crying, you know. She wasn't starving, but she thought she was. And I just remember like struggling to get her to latch sometimes.
Yeah, yeah, I know that can be so hard. Hmm.
But yeah, she was healthy. There wasn't anything wrong. The NICU didn't need to take her from me as soon as she was born, which was a huge relief. I remember this whole team of people like just standing at the door as like my baby is being born, you know, like a whole show. And they got to leave though. They didn't get to take her with them. So
Ah, that's great. Okay, so it seems like things like are getting a little better, with each birth, like more aligned with what you're wanting and you're exercising more self-agency and learning more,
yes.
about what you want. Yeah, take me to your third birth.
So before I got pregnant with my second daughter, I had gone through nursing school. So I had learned a lot, but not really as much as I had hoped. So by the time that I got pregnant with my third baby, which was a boy, um, I knew like I'm going in there and like I have learned that I have a voice and I am going to advocate for everything that I want, like birth plan, talk to my husband, like you're going to be there, you know, I need you to make sure that in these moments, like if I can't say what I want, that you will, you know. So we ran down that whole plan. Um, so when I got pregnant, it took me about a year to get pregnant with him after being taken off of an IUD birth control after having my second child. So that was a little, I guess, heartbreaking sometimes, you know, when my cycle would start and I'm like, oh, not this time, you know. And so finally, when it happened, we were ecstatic, and my two older girls were super excited as well. It was finally happening for us. So let's see. My pregnancy with him, I feel like, was pretty good as well. Um, of course, it's like always once you get to the end, you know, something pops up. um, but with him, I felt really good for the most part. I did have the wonderful nausea in the beginning. And then I did end up having symphysis pubis dysfunction, and that started around like 18 weeks. So it was definitely hard to deal with the pain, but like overall, my pregnancy was pretty healthy and right on track for everything. Um, all of the exercises and stuff that they recommend for SPD really didn't help me, and this was also during COVID, so in 2020 was, or wait, no, the beginning of 2021 was when I found out that I was pregnant. So we were still in the thick of it, and being a nurse and working through all of that and being pregnant was hard on my body, but I made it. I was strong.
Yeah, so that started at 18 weeks. So you had SPD, you were working, and you had two kids. That's a full plate.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It definitely was. So at around 7 months pregnant, I decided that I was going to stop working. We had bought a house at the beginning of 2021 as well. It was like the whole year was just booming for us. Um, so I decided at 7 months that I was going to stay home because like we needed the house put together, and I was working full time and picking up extra hours, and then, the kids being in school and all that. It was just constant. Like, there was just no time to stop. So at 7 months, we agreed, stay home, get the house together, do my nesting, and just make everything feel right for when the time comes. I feel blessed. I really do, to be able to be home, and I'm home with my kids now. um, so let's see. At my 39-week appointment with him, my blood pressure was like 130s over 80s. And here we are, being told that I need to be induced because they're worried that things might turn into preeclampsia. So actually, he was born at 39 weeks and 3 days. So I was given the option to go to the hospital that night or go the next day. And I didn't want to be induced. I knew what Pitocin felt like from my previous birth, and I did not want that. And another option they were telling me was the Foley balloon in your cervix, to pop it open to 4 centimeters, like that. And I was terrified. I'm like, no way, like, this cannot happen. So, I did all the little tricks, the old wives' tales. We did the walking. I ate a full pineapple. I drank nothing but raspberry leaf tea. Like, I bounced on the exercise ball. I did everything because I was determined I am not going into that hospital and being induced. So, hardly slept that night, just thinking about everything. And we go into the hospital, and of course, the first thing they want to do is start an IV. And I just remember looking at the nurse and just saying, why? Why do you have to do that? Well, just in case. And I'm like, I mean, like, if there's a reason that pops up later, like, you can have my arm to start the IV, but I don't want an IV. And, like, I could tell, like, she was kind of, like, taken back. And I told her, I'm like, I am not going to be strapped to this bed. I want to move. And I, of course, gave in. I let her start the IV, but I said, we're not connecting it to anything. You have an open line now, if that makes you feel better. So I feel like after I kind of, explained to her the things that I wanted for my birth experience, she surprisingly started following right along with what I was saying. But I think I had to come in kind of strong for her, for her to understand that this was the things that I wanted. I was in the regular labor and delivery unit, and at our hospital here, we have a family beginnings unit that is separate, but it's almost like home birth. It's so much more homey. They have like a queen size bed, and you can have a water birth, and it's homey, it's comfortable, compared to the cold, sterile hospital setting. So I asked for that, but because it was another VBAC, I was told no, that I couldn't have a water birth, that I could labor in the water, but when it came to pushing, I would have to get out of the water. And I said, by the time that it's time for me to push, I'm not going to get out of the water, so just forget it. Because I'm not, like, if you can't allow me to have the full water birth, like, you cannot ask a woman who is about to push a baby out to stand up and walk over to a bed. I said, that's not going to happen. So we might as well just let go of that idea and move on.
That's wise of you to know that ahead of time. It is totally cruel to ask someone who is pushing in the tub to get out of the tub. And, because providers, well, I guess in that hospital, they do offer water births, so they're trained for water births. So that's kind of a different scenario. But This comes up a lot. I see a lot of people talk about this. They say like, well, what you don't offer water birth, but you offer hydrotherapy, so I can be in the water during labor. And then when it comes time to push, I'm just not going to get out of the tub. But the problem with that is that providers then start to get really afraid because they don't really know what to do with a water birth and they're not comfortable with that. And that can lead them to make, like not smart choices or to operate from fear. It really sucks. It's not an evidence-based rule. It's a rule that centers liability, and convenience and is based on outdated and inaccurate research that does not really support outcomes at all. So, yeah, I'm really sorry. Like telling someone you can't have a water birth because you're a VBAC makes no sense. There's
I agree.
there's no research to support that water birth isn't safe for VBAC people,
Yeah.
especially if you've had a successful VBAC before. I don't see any reason why that wouldn't be okay. But anyway, I'm sorry.
That's what I was thinking too, but I was like, hey, like, I'm gonna go in and I already know how I feel, so I'm not even gonna let that even be a thing for me. I'm not even gonna hold on to it. Like, we're gonna go in here and we're going to do the things that I want to do, and I'm not going to let things happen to me. So, let's see here. I was actually having contractions when I went in, and I wasn't really feeling them. I thought they were Braxton Hicks. Um, the nurse was telling me, and I'm like, oh, I'm not feeling that. Well, they checked me, and I was at 3 centimeters on my own. So, therefore, all of their induction methods that they were going to start throwing at me was out the window. I was like, my body is doing this on its own naturally right now. So, like, let's not mess up the flow. And so they didn't. I had them bring in the exercise ball. They wanted to keep the monitor on my belly at all times, and I asked for the portable monitor so that I could walk the halls. I just told them, like, any ideas that you have that doesn't keep me in the bed, I want them. So they actually taught my husband like certain things to do. Me leaning over the bed and him just applying pressure on my back and my hips, and they really included him, which was great for him too, because he didn't want to just stand there and watch me. He wanted to jump in and help. So they allowed him to help me. I say allow, but he helped me.
Yeah, there was support there.
Yes. So they wanted to come in and check me, because it had been a little bit of time, and I think I was like maybe really starting to feel some of the contractions. She broke my water, and I think I was at 5 centimeters at that point that she broke my water. No meconium this time. Great. And then that is when the labor hit like so hard. So we were doing all the things, everything you could think of for comfort measures, because I did not want the epidural either. I'm like, it didn't work the whole time the last time, so there's no reason for it. Like, I pushed that baby out naturally with the catheter in my back that wasn't doing anything for me. So there's no point in me going through that whole process all over again, just to have them naturally anyway. So I want to say it was probably about an hour and a half after they broke my water at 5 centimeters that I like called them in. I'm like, this is like crazy intense right now. And they were like, we've been watching your monitors like from at the nurse's station, and you're really not catching a break. Like, these contractions are back to back to back to back. And I'm like, I am feeling it. And they were like, well, do you mind if we check you? And I was like, no. And the nurse was like, I mean, you never know, like, can I check you? And I was like, no. No. Like, at that point, I was just like, The contractions had me, no was the only thing I could say. No, don't touch me. I don't want any of that. So she was like, okay, well, I'll call the midwife in, since, things are definitely heating up here. So she came in and she asked if she could check me. And I was like, fine. Like, you guys keep asking me, so let's just do it. And when she went to check me, she's like, well, I can't actually tell you what you are because his head is already coming through your cervix. And she was like, so if you want to start pushing, you can. And I said, right now? And she said, yeah. And I started pushing, and they were all scrambling all over the room trying to get everything ready.
The good old, like, we're about to push or pushing, like, birth room scramble. It
Yes.
gets so chaotic. I tell people if you're like in transition, the hardest phase for most people, or if you're starting to push and then the room gets like super chaotic, which is not ideal for you, go hide in the bathroom. Go hide in the
Yeah.
bathroom and sit on the toilet and give yourself a few pushes on the toilet. Don't have a baby on the toilet.
Yeah.
But if you feel like you want to like sit on the toilet and just like let your baby come down a little lower and like give yourself a little time and a little privacy, or just like get on the bathroom floor or something, like
Yeah.
go hide and go get in the shower, like go hide so your peace isn't disrupted.
Yeah.
That's a little tip. But anyway, okay, sorry, I just wanted to say
Yeah, no
that.
problem. So they're all scrambling, they're trying to lay out all these pads and they're doing all this stuff. And meanwhile, like my husband's next to me and I am pushing this baby out. And like, I did the same thing that I did with my daughter prior, where I kind of did like my pelvic tilt, like, because the pressure of him coming through, I don't know if just moving my hips a certain way felt better. And the midwife coached me. She said, don't do that on your next push. And I was like, okay. She said, I want you to push into the bed so that you're not tilting your pelvis. So he's not going back and forth under your pubic bone. And I'm like, all right, cool. So I pushed a few more times, and my husband actually got to be the one to catch our son. Yes, she was standing behind him, but she was completely hands off, and he caught him and raised him up to my chest. I opted to do delayed cord clamping. So they weren't really, like jumping for joy about it, but they didn't really have a problem with it either. I think by that point it had become a little bit more common for people to ask for that. So they just put my placenta after it was delivered in a bowl, and they actually like stood there, like my husband stood up by my head and the nurse stood next to him holding the placenta. And I had a birth photographer, so she took pictures and they were holding the bowl right there next to my baby, showing the placenta with my baby still attached, which was amazing. I'm so glad that I opted to do things how I did that time around because it felt truly like empowering. I'm like, I can like do anything now, And it's not like I hadn't had two babies before that, but the experience was just different in the way that, my care team responded to me and helped me and made those things happen for me. It came true. That's what I wanted. So I felt like it honestly felt like a little vacation in the hospital after having my son because I was just like on cloud nine. Like, I remember just looking at my husband like the next day and being like, I can't believe I just did that. Like, I can't believe that.
Oh, yeah.
I'm just being like, oh my gosh, like, you're a queen.
Yes, I am a queen, and you
Yes.
don't forget, sir.
Yes.
Ah, go you.
Yes, that was definitely magical. And I was like, okay, it being my third baby, I'm like, I don't really know if I want to do that again. I don't know if we want to have any more. just wasn't sure, but knew that I didn't want to go and like have a tubal because I'm like I don't want to regret it later, So after my son was born, which he was born completely healthy, and they followed the things that I asked for in the hospital when it came to his care as well, which then carried over to his pediatricians, and they're following the things that I asked for as well, luckily. But yeah, I forget where I was going with that.
Well, let's see. So you were saying that you weren't sure about having a fourth. I
Yes,
have three, and I'm in that boat too. Some days I'm like, we could have a fourth baby, and then other days I'm like, we are never having kids
I
again.
know.
So we're like debating the vasectomy currently.
Oh, yes. Yeah, we're in that boat right now.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the back and forth conversation. Yeah.
So was your fourth baby a surprise, or did you plan for your fourth?
No, my fourth baby was a surprise. So after I had my son, I opted to do the IUD again, and I only had that. It was a 5 year one, and I only had it in for 18 months because I was like chronically like sick, like the whole entire time that I had the birth control in, like constantly sick, like no immune system, nothing. So I had done a little bit of research into the IUDs and just like side effects and all that sort of stuff. And my thought is maybe I had copper toxicity. I aligned with all of the symptoms from that, but I didn't want to give them the time to even test me. I just had them remove it. I'm like, no matter what, it's coming out.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Gosh, yeah, I hear of that happening to a lot of people. Same with like anxiety. I have a friend who had just bad anxiety problem for years, and she took medication for anxiety, and then she got her IUD removed to try to have a baby, and it was like the next day she was like, "I feel good." What the fuck? Like
I
what
know.
has happened? I
I
feel
know.
good. She just like never caught
I
it.
know.
So weird. Like I had the Depo-Provera shot when I was like 19, and I had a horrible reaction to it. And I went to all these providers and no one caught that. Like it was just a side effect from the Depo. Everyone was like, "You have all these mental health issues." And I was like, "I don't. I am fine." And just, something's happening hormonally. And it wore off and then I felt better. But yeah, it's
Yeah.
rough. It can be rough.
I don't feel like I really kind of like put two and two together for like a while. And then finally I was just like, I've never felt like this before. And this was a different birth control. So then I started, digging and coming across so many other women who had been dealing with the same thing. So I got that removed, thankfully. One of the best decisions I ever made. So that was, my son was 18 months at that point. And I just decided that we're going to do, natural family planning. I'm going to start tracking my cycles, avoiding the ovulation days leading up to after. And my cycle actually went really normal. Like it was, I pretty much knew when to expect it. So that was great. Um, until I lost my sister in April of 2024. And I believe that my body probably just wasn't acting the way that it normally would have with my cycles. It's crazy because I remember like the night that we had sex, and then like the next day me cramping and being like, I'm not supposed to be ovulating yet. But like I cramped. And I remember like the next day I told my best friend, I'm like, hey, check on me next month and make sure that I get my cycle. Because like I feel like something just happened there.
Yeah.
Yes.
Wow. So you feel like the loss of your sister was so shocking to your system that it impacted your cycle.
Yeah.
For
Yes,
sure.
I really do. And then
Totally.
also, I love to just think that, she made it to heaven and seen this little soul and thought, oh, they're so cute. I think you should have it, and sent it to me.
That's so sweet. I know of so many people. It's wild who lost a family member and got pregnant immediately after,
Yeah.
like within the same month. Yeah, so many people. It's wild.
And what's even crazier is I found out that I was pregnant on her birthday. So I was like,
You're kidding me.
no.
Wow, that feels so special.
I know. I remember going out to the cemetery and like taking flowers and being like, "Hey, so well, you already know." Like I don't have to tell you, but you know.
Oh, wow, that's so special.
I feel like getting pregnant with my third daughter, fourth pregnancy, was definitely a gift. Um, I don't know if I would have been able to handle the grief as as good as I did, for the most part, as good as I could. Um, just knowing that I had this other life that, needed nurturing and all that. So definitely helped me, I feel like, to treat my body good and give myself breaks and, just allow myself time to process, which was really hard because it was like, how does your brain process loss and like rebirth or birth, like how it's black and
Yeah,
white. How do you do that? Like
yeah,
honestly, like I just kept saying, like, I feel like this is a mind fuck. Like, what is happening? How do I even like, I'm like, I know there's a baby in here. I feel her moving. I feel her kicking. I have my own fetal Doppler, so I'm like, I hear her heartbeat. Like, I know she's in there. Like we've bought baby stuff, but like, how is this even happening right now? It was just so much really to kind of process all at the same time. Um, but then again, at the same time, because I knew that I had her to grow and to focus on, I think that that really kind of helped keep me out of my own mind as much with the loss and just not dwelling. I knew that there was going to be some light brought into my life. I just had to grow it first.
totally. Wow. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I'm sure that feels very relatable to a lot of people who have had similar experiences, holding all that joy and all that grief at the same time. So
Yeah.
wild. Yeah, what a ride.
Yeah.
Mm.
Sometimes I still feel like it is. So with her, of course, my goal was to have another VBAC. So I started going back to the same practice that I went to with my son and my daughter. And at one point, I just thought, I don't even want to go to the hospital. Like, we could just free birth at home, or, my husband had known a couple from his past, and I had kind of watched her go through midwifery school. So he would show me like these posts that she would do on social media, and I was just always so interested in it anyway. So, and he knew that. So he was like, look at this. This is the new thing she's learning. And so she had opened up a practice like a city over from us. Um, so at around, I think it was like 16 weeks was when I decided to reach out to her. And at 18 weeks, we interviewed and decided that we were going to hire her as our midwife and we were going to do a home birth. Yeah. So,
Ew.
yeah. So the I had thought about home birth with my son just after having the experience, the VBAC experience I did with my daughter. Um, but I didn't know what I knew now, So I remember asking them in the practice, like, what about a home birth? And I just remember them telling me, like, oh, it's too late for that or whatever. And I was just like, okay. So I just like let that thought go. But this time around, I was like, I really want to look into that. Like, this is like our last shot at me, having that experience. So we decided to hire her and go through. So all of my prenatal appointments were in her little cozy office space, and it was nice to have the same person every single time. We had hour visits, sometimes even longer, because we just would sit there and talk, and get to know each other and each other's lives. And of course, my husband knew her in the past anyway, so there was like catch up time, but also really informative time and just patient focus, like my comfort and just care. Like, I really just felt the care and the passion that she had for what she does. And that made a huge difference compared to, like you have 7-minute visits in a doctor's office. Like, you have a quota, like you can only spend so much time. That's just wild to me. So for my pregnancy with my daughter, everything was good. I ended up with the symphysis pubis dysfunction again, which makes sense because I'm sure everything was just kind of misaligned still and healed misaligned from the previous pregnancy. So felt like that was kind of just in the books anyway. But I did start seeing a chiropractor while I was pregnant for that, which it did help, like temporarily. A few days it would give me some relief, and then we'd be back to it. But I'm like, yeah, where was I at?
Yeah, what other, did anything else come up in that pregnancy?
So towards the end of my pregnancy, my blood pressure was in like the 130s over 80s, and because we knew of my history, my midwife was like on top of checking for protein. I believe we drew labs a couple times just to make sure. I can't think for the life of me what the labs were called, of course. Um,
Yeah, like a preeclampsia workup.
Yeah. Yeah, but
Mhm.
I remember there's like two specific ones that you want to look at, and I cannot think of what they are called right now. um,
That's okay, I don't know either.
but everything was looking good. Like, my blood pressure never raised any higher than that, so she was okay with that. I don't know if you can hear my baby crying.
Oh, they're fine. Everyone has babies in the
Okay.
background.
I just heard her like happy scream, and then now I hear her crying. I'm like, she doesn't know what she wants right now.
Oh, yeah. No, it's fine. And you're welcome
Um,
to have her if you want to have her.
I can, babe, let me go see if he wants me to take her.
Yeah, totally.
Oh my goodness. I'm just gonna go ahead and nurse her while we talk.
Go for it. Yeah.
She's like, I'm ready.
Yeah, sweet baby.
You did great. He said I held her off as long as I could.
Yeah. Oh yeah, you're totally welcome to nurse her. And I should probably wrap up here in pretty soon, but we're at the last birth story, so we're
Yes.
making good time. Yeah.
Okay, so for her, because we knew like things could lead to preeclampsia, my midwife had told me at my 38-week appointment, which we found out I was 3 centimeters dilated at that point, that I could try castor oil. And I know some people are for it and some people aren't, but I decided that I was going to try it. And it worked for me. I was having a lot of contractions, but I wasn't sure if they were really real because my belly was tightening up, but they weren't painful. So I had been dealing with that for 2 days, and finally, let's see, it was probably like 9 o'clock at night or something like that. I decided to lay down. I had been doing the miles circuit and doing all the exercises, doing everything, and the castor oil. Well, I had finally started feeling contractions. Hey. And so I texted my midwife and just let her know like things were starting to get a little spicy. And she asked me if I wanted her to come and check on me. And I'm like, I don't know. I don't want you to have to like come too early if things aren't really happening. And she's like, well, how often are your contractions? And I'm like, well, like 2 to 3 minutes apart. And she was like, okay, would you mind if I just come and check on you and, maybe do a cervical check if you're open to that? And I was like, sure. So she shows up and she checks me, and I'm 8 centimeters dilated.
You're kidding
Eight
me.
centimeters dilated.
No way.
Yes.
Oh my
She
gosh.
said, your amniotic sac is bulging through your cervix. So then she's like, well, at this point, my second oldest daughter is helping my husband fill up the birth pool. We had waited because I wasn't really sure if things were actually really happening. In the hospital, they're on top of you. They're checking everything constantly. So, like, you constantly have an update. Home birth, you just go with the flow and let things happen as they unfold. So, I'm like, okay. I'm like really starting to feel them. I'm like standing and rocking and, you know, doing all the things I can to keep myself comfortable at that point. And so she wanted to listen to her heartbeat and just, check and make sure she was tolerating everything okay. And halfway through that contraction and her listening, I was like, I feel like I need to push. Like, I feel like the pressure. And then I was like, maybe I have to poop. And then I was like, but maybe that's her doing all the pressure. And she was like, well, you can, go to the bathroom if you want. And I was like, no, nope. Just listen to her, because I was determined I'm not having my baby in that toilet. So at that point, when we were like halfway through and I was really feeling that pressure, and I really want to say like the fetal ejection like reflex was kicking in, I was like, okay, I have to go to the pool. And like I just like kind of left her in my room, and she eventually, caught up to me, but I just like came out to our room that we had everything set in, which I'm actually in. Those are still my birthing affirmations hung up because I just love them and I don't want them to come down. I got in the pool, and my husband happened to be right there, and he turned the camera on, and I sat there for probably like 10-20 seconds before a contraction hit me. And once it hit me, I started to push, and I felt her come down, and I felt my water break. And that was such like an interesting, cool just feeling to experience. And then on the next push, her head was fully delivered. And I told my midwife, I'm like, her head's out. And she was like, like all the way out? And I was like, yeah, it's all the way out. And it's so funny because, just like the scramble in the hospital, she's scrambling around trying to get everything ready because she had only been at my house for like 20 minutes at that point. So
That's amazing. And you didn't even know if
I
you were.
didn't. I
Yeah.
was so shocked when she said 8 centimeters. I thought there's no way. And then, yeah, within like 20 minutes, I had a baby. So after her head was delivered on that next contraction, I started pushing again, and her whole body was delivered. And my husband had just jumped into action, and he reached in the water and pulled her out and put her up to my chest. And we were all just amazed. But I got to have my home birth and I got to be in the water. And that is what I had wanted.
Yes, Mama.
Yeah.
Yay. I'm so happy for you.
Yes, that
Wow.
it it makes me want to like do it like 10 times again. I'm like, we don't need any more babies, but like I will birth anybody's babies that need birth. Because it was just magical, and it was just great to have the newborn exam just like right here in front of me, and you know be able to make the choices that I wanted to make, and having my other children here, like they were here to witness their sister be born. My oldest daughter was able to cut her umbilical cord. Like they were here and they were involved. They didn't have to stay home because I was in the hospital. They were able to meet their sister right away. And I have videos of them just, oh my gosh, she's so cute, and just everything they were saying. And I'm like, that is what matters. Your family that you're creating is what matters. And I don't feel like the hospitals really encourage all of that much. So it was just amazing to be here in my own comfort space, you know, have everything just go as planned. I also had a birth photographer for that one too, but she didn't make it in time.
Oh, bummer.
Yeah, she came right afterwards. She walked in the door and I was like, "Hi, I had a baby." And she was like, "Oh man." She was like, "I knew I should have come earlier when I was talking to you." She's like, "I knew it was going to be happening." I'm like, "Well, I'm glad you knew."
It's so hard to guess sometimes, you
It
know?
is.
Yeah.
It is. But she was perfectly healthy, my littlest baby. And she had the delayed cord clamping or cord cutting as well. Um, we got to have some fun little pictures done with the placenta and the cord for her. But she's perfectly healthy. Not a worry. I didn't tear. Yeah.
Yes, that's amazing.
Yes.
Wow. What a beautiful journey into motherhood. Like what a beautiful journey. Each time learning to speak your truth, to connect with what it is that matters to you, and to value that, and to express that confidently, and to learn that. So much self-discovery, along
Yes.
this journey. Yeah, it's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing. I'm so happy for you.
Thank you for having me on. I know it kind of took us a little while to finally make the right time.
Oh yeah, I we're both very busy moms. So
Yes.
for anyone
Yeah.
listening, we're doing this pretty late at night. Especially for you, it's probably like, is it 11? It's like
Yeah.
11:30.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, but thanks
Aw.
for letting me come on and share my story. And I'm hoping that it'll help somebody else, with their journey.
I'm absolutely sure that it will. Yeah. Oh, dear. Thank you so much for sharing. Um, I'm gonna stop recording now.